Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Giridharidhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Giridharidhari. Yashodanandan Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Reading from Our Family Business, The Great Art of Distributing Srila Prabhupada's Books by Vasi. Humans have a natural thirst for knowledge, and the greatest concentration of knowledge is available in books. Despite competing technologies like television, therefore, people still gravitate toward books. Andrew Ross, professor of social and cultural analysis at New York University, writes, "The smallest book still contains more ideas of worth centered in the entire history of television." Now, with the advance of the internet and electronic publishing markets, there are plenty of ways to read a book. So do print books still sell? Industry experts say that although books are now presented electronically and not just on paper, sales of paperback and hardbound books have not waned. But the book itself is hanging on and even thriving. More than any major cultural product, it has retained its essential worth. People have questioned whether Srila Prabhupada's books are sometimes wasted on those who cannot understand them or who don't read them right away. In a letter to Puranjan Das dated May the 4th, 1976, Srila Prabhupada answers this doubt by describing how these same people will someday come to understand what valuable knowledge they have received, even if they don't appreciate it when they first purchase a book. Srila Prabhupada speaking. These books are the life of human society. Others may be disturbed, but they cannot disturb the Srimad Bhagavatam. Let any man come, but here they cannot touch. We are putting these books for deliberation before the topmost thinkers of human society. Therefore, I have to see that in all languages all of our books are published. If we strain, if he takes one book home, someday people will come to understand what valuable knowledge they have received. This transcendental literature, nobody can challenge it. It is done so nicely without any spotless Purana. Please continue like this to print books in all the languages for the benefit of suffering, misdirected humanity. Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution Key. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 19, the Island of Jambudvip, Text 6. Na I sa atmamavatam. Sorry, atmatmavatam. Suritama. Navai sa atmatmavatam suritama. Saktas Trilokyam Bhagavan Vasudeva. Saktas Trilokyam Bhagavan Vasudeva. Na Strikritam Kashmalam Ashnavita. Nastrikritam Kashmalam Ashnavita. Na Lakshmanam Chapi Ihatum Arhati. Na Lakshmanam Chapi Vihatum Arhati. Navai Sa'atmat Mavatang Suritama. Navai Sa'atmat Mavatang Suritama. Saktas Trilokyam Bhagavan Vasudeva. Nastrikritam Kashmalam Ashnavita. Nalakshmanam Chapi Vihatam Arhati. Navaisa Atmat Mavatang Suritama. Saktas Trilokyam Bhagavan Vasudeva. Nastrikritam Kashmalam Ashnavita. Nalakshmanam Chapi Vihatam Arhati. Navaisa Atmat Mavatang Suritama. Saktas Trilokyam Bhagavan Vasudeva Strikritam Kashmalam Ashnavita Lakshmanam Chapi Vihatam Arhati Vaisatmatmavatam Suritama Saktas Trilokyam Bhagavan Vasudeva Nastrikritam Kashmalam Ashnavita Lakshmanam Chapi Vihatam Arhati. No, not I, indeed, so he, Atma, the Supreme Soul, Atma Vatam, of the self-realized souls, Suritama, the best friend, Sakta, the touched, Trilokyam, to anything within the three worlds, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, the all-pervading Lord, Na, not, Strikritam, obtained because of his wife, Kashmalam, sufferings of separation, Ashnavita, would obtain, Na, not, Lakshmanam, his younger brother Lakshman, Cha, also, Api, certainly, Ihatum, to give up, Arhati, be able. Translation. Since Lord Sri Ramachandra is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vasudeva, he is not attached to anything in this material world. He is the most beloved Supersoul of all self-realized souls, and he is their very intimate friend. He is full of all opulences, therefore he could not possibly have suffered because of separation from his wife, nor could he have given up his wife and Lakshman, his younger brother. To give up either would have been absolutely impossible. Let's repeat. Since Lord Sri Ramachandra is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vasudeva, he is not attached to anything in this material world. He is the most beloved Supersoul of all self-realized souls, and he is their very intimate friend. He is full of all opulences, therefore he could not possibly have suffered because of separation from his wife, nor could he have given up his wife and Lakshman, his younger brother. To give up either would have been absolutely impossible. Therefore, by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. In defining the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we say that he is full in all six opulences: wealth, fame, strength, influence, beauty, and renunciation. He is called renounced because he is not attached to anything in this material world. He is specifically attached to the spiritual world and the living entities there. The affairs of the material world take place under the superintendence of Durga Devi, Shrishti Sthiti Pralaya Sadhana Shakti Eka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Bhavati Durga. Everything is going on under the strict rules and regulations of the material energy represented by Durga. Therefore, the Lord is completely detached and need not give attention to the material world. Sita Devi belongs to the spiritual world. Similarly, Lord Lakshman Ramachandra's younger brother, is a manifestation of Sankarsana, and Lord Ramachandra himself is Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since the Lord is always spiritually qualified, he is attached to servants who always render transcendental loving service unto him. He is attached to the truth in life, not to Brahminical qualities. Indeed, he is never attached to any material qualities. Although he is the super soul of all living entities, he is specifically manifest to those who are self-realized, and he is especially dear to the hearts of his transcendental devotees. Because Lord Ramachandra descended to teach human society how dutiful a king should be, he apparently gave up the company of Mother Sita and Lakshmana. Factually, however, he could not have given them up. One should therefore learn about the activities of Lord Ramachandra from a self-realized soul. Then one can understand the transcendental activities of the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupadhamayam Dadati Swabhatantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yutak Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnamam Shah Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganitam Vitam Dam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Shakan Vitam Shah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Prabhasindavayevacha Aditanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, I thought for ourselves something that's very important in this purport, especially in the light of our book distribution activities. Since the Lord is always spiritually qualified, he is attached to servants who always render transcendental loving service unto him. He is specifically manifest to those who are self-realized, and he is especially dear to the hearts of his transcendental devotees. So actually, I've often struggled to understand the nature of Krishna's pastimes of separation from his devotees in Vrindavan and also in other pastimes like Mother Sita. And this purport really very much casts a lot of light on this subject matter, and that Krishna is always intimately connected with all of his devotees, and those devotees who are self-realized then they're constantly in touch with Krishna in their hearts, they're constantly in touch with Krishna in their heart, and whatever form of Krishna that they're most attached to, then even if that remembrance is not always there on in a sense of being able to be with the Lord personally, or even being able to remember the Lord, or even being able to be contemplating the Lord's qualities, Nevertheless, in the heart, the Lord is always there with the devotee. So, like for example, Arjuna, um, he says, how is it that he says to Krishna, as is recorded in Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, how is it that you spoke this science of yoga to the sun god? Because the sun god is like much older than you, and you appeared many millennium after the sun god. And then Krishna says, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O Arjuna. So Krishna's not just speaking to Arjuna there because Arjuna has been put into illusion, so he can speak so he can have that conversation with Krishna on the battlefield. Arjuna never has full the same, although Arjuna is an eternal associate of Krishna, and whenever Krishna appears to perform that pastime, then Arjuna is always present in that pastime. And although he's always present, he takes on a body composed of the three modes of material nature to be able to perform that pastime in the material world. And therefore he's subject to a certain amount of forgetfulness, and not just a certain amount of forgetfulness. He doesn't remember his previous lives with Krishna. He doesn't remember them. It's not just that Arjuna is in temporary illusion, and that like at a certain time he remembers all of the pastimes on millions of occasions. No, he doesn't remember that. So similarly, we will never be completely aware of Krishna. Even the pure devotee is not aware of absolutely everything about his relationship with Krishna. But Krishna gives sufficient understanding by which the devotee never becomes completely bewildered. And also at the same time, Krishna is constantly in touch with the devotee within the heart. So even though we may not always be able to remember every instruction that we've received from devotees, we may not be able to remember all of the things that we've read in Srila Prabhupada's books which have really inspired us in the past. We may not be able to remember different realizations that we've had in the course of our service. But if we go deep within our hearts and really hear the holy name and meditate on whatever that we're reading at the present time, and really pray to be aware of that connection, then we can be connected in that intimate way with Krishna. And depending on our advancement in Krishna consciousness, that ability will increase more and more, so that eventually it will become like constant, in the sense that it'll always be accessible to us, even when we're performing activities which put us in touch with persons in the mode of ignorance, or put us in touch with, or even when we're in suffering a lot of bodily pain or emotional difficulty or difficulty in social interactions. Like a very advanced devotee can immediately, or is always actually, has access to that spiritual energy. And when we're engaged in Srila Prabhupada's transcendental book distribution, and because that particular service is very dear to Srila Prabhupada, then we have a greater opportunity to tap into that energy and that appreciation of the closeness of Krishna to us. And not only do we have a greater opportunity in the sense, but we're forced to. We're forced to because we're being asked to go out into, like the turbulent ocean of the material world, and associate quite intimately with persons who are, who are disturbed by their own situation in the material world. There's a very nice painting of the material ocean. It's similar to the picture in Bhagavad Gita where where you the picture of Bhagavad Gita of like the staircase one staircase leads up to the spiritual world and one staircase leads down to the lower planets, and it shows the activities that are going on in the lower planets. But this picture it shows those activities in the ocean, and then on the ocean is a boat with all of the devotees are on the boat, and they're like having Harinam on the boat, and they're all in their dhotis, and then if you look very, very closely on the picture, because it's probably a big picture, but I've only seen it in small resolution, and then there's some of the devotees are like hanging over the side of the boat, and they're pulling up the living entities that are like drowning in the ocean and pulling them on board the boat. So that's what we're doing when we're going out to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, and because we're hanging over the edge, and like we're coming very close to that turbulent ocean of the material modes, much closer than we are normally, especially those of us who are fortunate enough to live in the ashram and associate like virtually 24 hours a day with devotees. So to go out into that situation and be like face to face, so close to the material energy, then if we can become bewildered, even though we're just hanging over the edge of the boat, we can become forgetful of our relationship with Krishna, or our relationship with the devotees. So it's a it's a kind of dangerous situation, but because of the nature of the activity that we're performing, then we're surcharged with the mercy of the Guru Parampara, the mercy of Krishna, and especially the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Another example is given that an electrical current passes through a very, very tiny little wire. Like if you see a tiny little wire on the ground, it's just a tiny piece of wire, and it's very insignificant. But actually, a very, very powerful current can pass through that wire. So similarly, we may feel ourselves to be very vulnerable and very susceptible to danger and to pain and to feeling of isolation. But if we always remain connected to the current of devotional service, and especially to the current of the devotional service of those in the mood of preachers, then we'll be protected by that current. We'll be surcharged by that energy. And one reason that devotees like Srila Prabhupada and other acharyas in our line remain always surcharged is because of their humility, that even though they've been empowered to perform such wonderful activities, they never take credit for themselves. They always give credit to their spiritual masters and to Krishna. And in that way they always remain connected, and that false ego and pride doesn't block that energy that's passing through them. Now, I had a question here. I'm looking for assistance. There's one sentence here which I couldn't quite understand. So this is in the second paragraph of the purport. Srila Prabhupada says, since the Lord is always spiritually qualified, he is attached to servants who always render transcendental loving service unto him. He is attached to the truth in life, not to Brahminical qualities. So one Brahminical quality in the Bhagavad Gita is truthfulness. But is it not the first quality in the Bhagavad Gita? So what's the difference between the Brahminical quality of truthfulness and the truth in life? So you want to pass Thank you. So yeah, sometimes truthfulness also is an impediment to devotion. An attachment to being truthful just due to like pride in being very moralistic can be an impediment to devotional service. Like one example is Yudhishthira Maharaj. Yudhishthira Maharaj was very had a reputation of being always very truthful. So therefore he wouldn't accept the request of speaking a lie on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, even though by saying that lie he would protect the lives of his own great those who are under his care. So so although the Brahminical qualities are very conducive to the appropriate running of material world, and although they are essential to enable us to rise to a platform by which we can understand devotional service, and that sometimes we become attached to the process, or sometimes we become attached to the elements of the process, and even when those elements are not helpful for devotional service. So similarly on book distribution, sometimes, especially book distribution in the Western world, and actually in India is probably a lot more, has kind of absorbed a lot of the worst qualities of the Western world now. So it's actually the same world everywhere virtually. So sometimes to extend Srila Prabhupada's compassion, then we need to surrender some of those qualities which we are very attached to be able to extend that mercy to others. Just like, I suppose a nice example of a boat. Actually, you might have to. It's probably a Brahminical quality is to be, respectful to members of society, to observe social etiquette. But if you're pulling somebody out of the ocean, then you're not going to observe social etiquette. If you're going to have to save them, you might have to save a young lady. You might have to pull a young lady out in what would be considered a very unchaste way. But if you don't do so, then you're allowing them just to continue to suffer in the material world. And you can just imagine, can just imagine what our life would be if we hadn't come in contact with devotees, or even worse, what our life would be like if somehow or other we were just like thrown into a place where we thought that we would never have the association with devotees again. Sometimes we'd have like that's a kind of like devotee nightmare, that they may dream of being in a place where there's no devotees and where there's no possibility of seeing devotees. So that's what it's like for almost everybody in the material world who hasn't come in contact with devotional service. That's the place that they're in. They're in a place where it's definitely not certain that they're going to come in contact with devotees. And in some of the places we go to distribute groups, we're meeting people who are very unlikely to come in contact with devotees unless we extend Srila Prabhupada's books to them. So in this way we can adapt our feeling of fear. We can adapt our feeling of fear of losing devotee association, and we can apply that to the people who we meet. That we don't want anyone to have to be in that situation of being like in the material ocean, birth after birth, millennium after millennium. So, another example is given in the Shastras is that the likelihood of coming in contact with a pure devotee is similar to the likelihood of a little turtle, like a turtle that's been born in the ocean, or born like in shallow waters, and then the baby turtle's been like washed out to sea into the deep ocean, away from its mother, and then like somehow or other it just like when it comes to the surface, then its head pops through the hole in a little log of wood and it gets washed ashore. So that likelihood of that happening is like very, very, very tiny. So similarly, the likelihood of us coming in contact with a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada when we're traversing the vast ocean of material existence, that's the kind of likelihood that we're talking about. So similarly, we are going out with the opportunity to give people that opportunity of connecting with the pure devotee. So I'll stop there. The lure of material. Yeah. Well, it's powerful because we forget that everyone is completely lost in the material world. There are very, very few leaders, spiritual leaders in the material world. There are a lot, since lockdown, there's lots of opportunity now to enter into conversations that go on quite high levels, like academic levels and like government think tanks and these kind of forums where people are discussing how can we change, a lot of people are talking about there needs to be a systemic change in society, and the capitalism's failed and and people are talking about all different kinds of very complex social systems. Whole system is very complex, but nobody's talking. No one's close to. No one talks about the Vedas. No one talks about the Bhagavad Gita. No one even mentions any spiritual teachers. In fact, it's very, very atheistic, actually, and very. Yeah, if there's any reference to religion, it's really just that it's the responsibility of religious teachers to use their influence to encourage their followers to adopt the policies of the government. That's about it, really. So it's good to study what actually has the material energy got to offer. And Srila Prabhupada did that a lot. Like he revealed to us how cheap and how shallow material enjoyment is, and also how entangling it is, and so that we actually really feel very urgent about keeping in the association with devotees, and especially about taking shelter of the holy name of Krishna. This is the incarnation who's come, this is the form of Krishna who's come to save us in Kali Yuga. The holy name is already here. We don't need to wait. So Krishna is our mother. So yeah, the devotees are surrogate mothers. Krishna is our mother, Krishna is our father, Krishna is the Lord of our life. So the devotees are reminding us that it's only when we forget our intimate relationship with Krishna, it's only when we forget the love that Krishna has for us, that we start to paddle in the material ocean again. It's like paddling. You can have a little paddle in the material ocean, but it's very easy to get dragged in by a big wave, and then you can be lost for who knows how long. Thank you. So yeah, we may feel unqualified to be the parents of others, but we're being empowered. So it's like when you put on the uniform, like the policeman puts on the uniform and feels empowered by the uniform. So we can put on our book bags and feel empowered. In that way, we're giving that support in the form of Srila Prabhupada's knowledge. So we're acting as parents in the sense that we're giving the association of the grandfather to everyone. Pancha Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Gaura Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki.